and you're trying as hard as you can not to reinvent the wheel, but literally these guys are just trying to recreate the processes that they know so well. And that
if you do any procedures, no one cares. Your procedural practice, your value of your patients and your surgical skill is almost nothing.
At the end of the day, I think you're right. I think they can out-business us for sure. I know they can.
As people realize, you know what, I'm a surgeon and I'm very surgical and my practice is worth almost nothing.
The beauty scientists, Dr. Kristy Hamilton and Dr. Roy Kim. Real beauty without the hype.
Welcome to The Beauty Scientists. I'm Dr. Kristy Hamilton here with Dr. Roy Kim. We're board certified plastic surgeons, excited to bring this week's topic, which is about what Dr. Kim really learned at our annual aesthetics meeting. And the novel new elements to it were about private equity and how it's revolutionizing medicine and specifically plastic surgery in the United States. This is, Roy, you were saying this was like the most novel concept of the whole meeting.
To me, it was. So ASAPS, the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery meeting, they just had the meeting in May 2024. And of course, you always want to learn the latest advances in face, breast, body surgery, technologies, blah, blah, blah. The biggest advance to me was private equity. They had two conferences, two panels where they just handed it over to the private equity people. It's the first time I've ever seen this at a plastic surgery meeting. And there weren't that many people there. And I think this is by far the biggest development in plastic surgery, bar none.
So we know private equity has really come in and targeted medicine in general. We've seen their takeover of anesthesia groups, radiology groups were very popular. Some of the larger orthopedic groups and dermatology groups, I think maybe more than all of those, were very, very popular, and combining them, bringing in economies of scale and whatnot, and lumping them under one big topic. Plastic surgery is kind of resisted up until this point, maybe because there's a lot of solo private practice individuals like you and I. So what's different now, and why is it becoming a movement in the industry?
I think there are a couple reasons. Of course, there's more money sloshing around that needs places to be invested. I think I can't name all the reasons, but the ones off the top of my head are a lot of plastic surgery practices are older, specifically baby boomers. You know, they're like hitting retirement age. And so they're looking to retire and they're looking to cash out for the maximum value. Interestingly, and this has been a trend in American medicine, if you do any procedures, no one cares. Your procedural practice, your value of your patients and your surgical skill is almost nothing. Private equity, hospitals value recurring revenue streams. So if you could see a patient every year, if you could see a patient every 6 months, forever, that's what multi-specialty groups, hospitals, health insurance companies, that's what they want. Procedures tend to be one-off and very linked to surgeons or proceduralist skill. That's the second thing. I think the third thing is that private equity has already started in so many industries. Specifically within medicine, there's private equity merger and acquisition in pharmacies, in physical therapy, in dentistry. Heck, it's coming to veterinary medicine. It's definitely happening in dermatology. As people realize, you know what, I'm a surgeon and I'm very surgical and my practice is worth almost nothing. If I have a med spa, a recurring revenue stream, suddenly people are very interested in it because they're sort of acquiring a patient list and no one's doing it. Whereas in dermatology, they've already done it to a very large extent. The only other people who really own med spas are plastic surgeons. I think that oculoplastics, facial plastics /ENT, they don't own quite as many med spas.
So it's the med spa that they're mainly interested in. And that kind of makes sense, right? Because I think always the criticism of plastic surgery businesses are that it's really, really tied to the surgeon. So if you can buy the practice, but if the surgeon leaves, then really what are you left with there? Arguably, it's not worth investing in from that perspective, unless you're like a larger group where surgeons are coming in and there's more of a cyclical aspect to it with like younger, middle-aged and older surgeons that are there. Well, the med spa thing interests me too, because it seems like there's med spas popping up on, I don't know what it's like in San Francisco, but in Houston, I feel like they're popping up on every street corner. And you almost have to wonder, are we saturated already? Or is it coming? Have we already reached that point? Apparently, I mean, those are pretty smart guys in private equity, and I guess they don't think so.
I think generically, you're actually probably right. They think that with the economic conditions today, about 60% of med spas are losing money. And yes, you're in Houston, I'm in Northern California. There are med spas all over the place. However, how many have committed medical directors that really want to be open 5 to 6 days a week, are working hard all the time to make sure the books look good, they're making money, they're profitable, and they're constantly growing? I think there aren't that many med spas like that care, that have great medical directors, that are always looking to grow, that don't have staff turnover, that are always looking to grind down and get the lowest rates for injectables and lasers and insurance and medical supplies and all that stuff. So there may be a shaking out with maybe the less profitable ones or the ones who aren't taking it as seriously. But if you have a profitable med spa, typically you can grow it to a second one. And then there's certain numbers that private equity wants to take over your practice or to partner with you.
Yeah, because there really is a craft to it. I think we see always like these weekend courses, or heck, now I get they're interviewing Instagram courses now, where you can take them and it's like anyone can become an injector if you do this 5-hour course. But there really is something to be said to knowing the anatomy as well as we as plastic surgeons do, operating in those areas, understanding all the tissues, how they move, how they work. So I can see why a plastic surgeon driven practice would be appealing in that sense. Roy, what do you think? What does this mean for patients? What do you think the impact of this will be? There's so few in general, like physician owned practices to begin with now. Plastic surgery has been a holdout. What do you think this looks like?
Ideally, to patients, if they like certain services, certain injectors or certain med spas, there should be no difference. I do think that if they are going to a med spa that can be improved, what happens is that it will be more efficient, both good and bad. They may get more of an upsell. They may see prices increase. A very common tactic is to have some sort of like monthly subscription, sort of like Netflix for med spas. Private equity loves that because number one, you have med spas, recurring revenue stream. Two, you have the monthly payment, recurring revenue stream. And that's what they really like. The other thing too is that you really have to know who your injector is. I don't think, in other countries, you have an allegiance to a med spa or you have an allegiance to some group that owns a med spa. You really have an allegiance to your individual injector, your individual doctor, and that won't change. But your individual doctor may be under certain constraints or may walk after a takeover.
I know. I think it's such a great thing. Plastic surgery, internal medicine, whatnot, to have independent, truly independent physicians. So I always worry a little bit when everyone and it's great being employed too. There's so many benefits to being an employed physician, but I think having that balance is great. I hope I hope plastic surgery doesn't end up going the way that essentially all the other fields have gone. So doctors don't necessarily love business, and I think that's somewhat has driven us to be in the state of medicine that we are now, in terms of physicians not having perhaps as much control as we used to, and having relinquished a lot of that to the big hospital systems and certainly the insurance companies. Let's say you're working, or maybe you are the private equity. When you're the plastic surgeon that's like starts it, is snapping up all these practices. What are ways that would make your company more efficient?
Are you talking as a private equity side or plastic surgeon side?
On the private equity side, what would you, if you were in charge of all this and you were snapping up plastic surgeon practices left and right, what are the changes that you would implement in the practices?
Before I'd even purchase, the books have to be in order. It has to be a more organized practice. So we're not just talking about profit and making money. We're also talking about accounting practices, bookkeeping practices. The other big thing, honestly, is probably office policies, a policy manual, something where if there's an employee out, you can easily replace them, something that increases efficiency. The private equity side, holy crap. They can do so much and they're already doing so much. We have no idea. I didn't know this until I went to the conference. So some of it I came up with on my own. Some of it I know they're doing. They have bulk pricing on injectables. They can get injectables at a much lower price than you or me. They have bulk pricing on lasers and medical devices. They have bulk pricing on medical malpractice insurance, as well as business insurance for the med spa. They have lower pricing for payroll, for workers' comp, for accounting and bookkeeping and general admin. They have lower costs for medical and surgical supplies. They have lower costs on the software that runs the actual med spa. Some of them actually have talent ready to travel, and either in the management side or the injector side to hang out for a couple months to train everybody and make sure everything's better. They have policy manuals ready to go. They have training for actual injectors. And finally, if this is true in all private equity, all businesses, if you own 5 or 10 or 20 practices, you know what's average pricing. You know what's great pricing. You know what's bad pricing. You know if someone's good and they can see a certain number of patients and everybody's happy and they see, 10 patients. And then you see other people who the patients are unhappy and they are only able to see 6 patients in the morning. It just, they know the benchmarks and all the measurements. KPIs, key performance indicators, as you probably know.
So basically, instead of, when we come in, open up our own practice, unless you're joining someone, if you truly are starting from scratch, like you are learning a lot of these things on your own. I'm sure you read some books. I know I did. I was researching entrepreneurship and trying to learn it from the plastic surgery side as well as just like general principles. And you're trying as hard as you can not to reinvent the wheel. But literally, these guys are just trying to recreate the processes that they know so well. And that definitely, and this is what they do. Like they're very smart. They're smart guys in private equity for sure. So that's interesting. Just having those economies of scale alone seem huge as opposed to a individual. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Yes, there are 4 ways according to this conference. I think there are only 3 ways, but these are the 3 options. You could do nothing and ignore this trend. You can have a doctor-to-doctor purchase, which is the traditional way of doing things. Private equity typically wants a 5-year horizon or less. So they take over or they invest a lot of money and they want the numbers to look better within 5 years or less to either make it hyper efficient or to sell it. They had another option, the 4th option, evergreen capital. I think that's more like a twist on regular private equity, where they want a longer term partnership and help it grow, but over 10 years or longer. To me, that's just like private equity on like a longer term scale. And what's interesting to me is that even if you ignore this problem, private equity is talking to your local competitors. They're talking to the med spas in the area. And so your local competitor may suddenly have more efficiencies, be able to do things better, may have more advertising dollars, and they may potentially be a huge competitor to you. So I don't think we can ignore the problem. Or maybe it's not a problem. Ignore the trend. How's that sound? That's more neutral.
Yeah, ignore the trend. I think at the end of the day, we just have to keep on doing, maybe it's like a dinosaur mentality, but I think like the edge plastic surgeons will always have over the med spas is our training and our knowledge. And at the end of the day, I think you're right. I think they can out-business us for sure. I know they can. What we will have on our side is just really knowing how to take care of patients so well, understanding their concerns, and then knowing how to execute a plan that's going to deliver the results that they're expecting. But with enough education, you can train a lot of people, and they probably have plastic surgeons on staff that are training their injectors. I wouldn't be surprised. So it's
you and I know,
smart.
Yes, the efficiency of even doing something that we think is more straightforward, like even Botox or filler, just like 1 syringe of filler. There's a world of difference of who does it efficiently and safely, but in a shorter period of time versus other people. It just depends.
Yes.
So
I like to tell patients it's like you're not buying the syringe, you're like purchasing the expertise for like enhancing and optimizing your face using that syringe. But it's not like buying a car. Like you could go to all the different dealerships, like ask for the same model with the same like upgrades and packages, and you'll walk out with the same thing. But it really is, it's just the material, it's just the tool, but you have to execute the vision. So
absolutely.
But it's very, very interesting. I know some of the groups in Houston, particularly a bigger one, has been purchased by private equity. And to your point earlier about, the practice being so focused on the surgeon themselves, that's why a lot of these models have failed in the past, but they seem to be going for these like larger groups or individual physicians are merging together to make themselves also look more interesting to ultimately sell to private equity and use that as their retirement. You were speaking about the baby boomers retiring. I'm a little bit far away from that. I imagine you are too. So we can merge and sell our practices together when we're older.
I think the other final note, nurse injectors, NPs, and PAs, they are under, I think, a little more stress than doctors because in most states you have to be under a medical director of some kind. even in California, an NP or PA can really have their own practice, and the medical director is sort of their name only, like they're not really doing anything. They're conduit for getting supplies as well as insurance, but you still need some type of medical director. Honestly, I think because of the nature of their degree and because they can't open up their med spa on their own, you better be an amazing injector. Because if you're not hyper efficient, great with patients, if you simply don't do it enough, I don't know if you'll be hired by these larger chains.
Yeah, you'll have to find a way to get that experience, which is already hard to do. That's why there's so many courses.
Yeah. I was talking to a PA friend of mine down in Beverly Hills. She's been approached by private equity. And so next time I go down there, we're going to have dinner or brunch or something and talk about it, because she's not ready to retire, but the money looks pretty good. She has a good practice, but who knew?
Well, that's probably ideal for them. Someone also that they want to keep on for a good long while, because I agree. It's like you're not buying a manufacturing plant. Like the value is very much tied to the talent, and the talent is people. So, which is good news for us.
Yeah.
But this is a fascinating topic, and I always enjoy talking to you about the business of medicine, the business of plastic surgery, because it impacts patient care at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I mean, it's going to happen, I think, over the next 10 years. And we can definitely help to shape it or to have the highest standards for our patients and increase patient safety. But, if it's a commodity, if it's something that's viewed as common or not that hard to do, it's just going to be driving. I mean, I guess it's good for consumers because it will drive the cost down, but it's also bad for consumers because I think certain things do require artistry or to get, a great aesthetic result. It's not, okay, I'm going to get this package deal. That's not the way it works. Even for injectables, forget about surgery, which is more complicated.
It may come down to the end of the day. It's like, you can go anywhere and have Botox put in your face and things will be smoother. But the question is, will you look better after having it done? And I think that's where the distinction really will lie in terms of who is doing your treatment.
I look forward to us being co-CEOs and having a 200 med spa location where we're just flying around and training people and encouraging.
Oh, yes. I love education. And I know you do too, because you have your own course and love injectables, as do I. So maybe that is our future. We'll be educators. Yeah.
I mean, well, you're younger in your practice, but I mean, let's face it, if you got a good offer, I think that you would probably take it. Nobody thinks, hey, I need to buff up the books and do everything possible to make sure that when I hit 65 or 70 or whatever, that I'm going to get the maximum value. But weirdly enough, that time urgency is built in and baked into private equity. And then we all need it to a certain extent.
We'll see. I'll revisit that conversation with you when I'm 65. Right? For now, I'm really enjoying being my own boss. So we'll see. If there's a certain dollar amount you cannot assign to that.
That's definitely true.
A fascinating topic, and I was very excited to interview you about it. We'll be keeping our eye on this trend and updating. So are you all seeing this in your industries? Is private equity taking over there? I'll be curious to see what this looks like on the horizon. And Roy, we might have to do a follow-up episode in a couple of years.
Definitely. So thanks for talking to me about this. And I hope that, I went to the conference, you didn't, but this is a very interesting trend. You know about it in Houston. Now you'll keep your eyes and ears open to see what's happening.
Yes. And thank you for another interesting episode. Comment below with any questions. We'd love to hear your comments. And as always, stay beautiful.
Stay beautiful.
Thank you for joining us on The Beauty Scientists. Be sure to visit thebeautyscientists.com and learn more about modern beauty and connect with Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Kim.